following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. You are comfortably zoned with me, the Wandering Jew. Not just the Tokin Jew, but the Wandering Jew. I'm out in California, Alameda, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the area, Alameda is right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the northern part of one great state. My guest, hoping to have two guests today. He'll join it. The second one will join us. I don't want to give it away who it is in case he doesn't join us. But Jerry Feitelberg, welcome back to the Zone. It is always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. And it's always good to be with you on the program. Thank you for having me. As a fellow Alamedan, some of the things that you said, if people come to Alameda and they want to go to downtown San Francisco, it's a nice 15-minute ferry ride from the old Alameda Naval Air Station. There's a ferry stop. In fact, there's two ferry stops there now. And it's right to the ferry building and the Embarcadero in San Francisco. It's a short 20-minute ride. You can have a nice cup of coffee or a cocktail on the ride over and go visit the city of San Francisco. You don't have to drive in. And if you need to go anywhere, you can take Uber or a cab and enjoy San Francisco that way. It's just always been a fun day to take the ferry.
Jerry Feitelberg, you could be in the Chamber of Commerce. You like me love this city. It's a town. It's a small town, but it's carefully nestled in and around Oakland and San Francisco, and it provides a respite for those wanting to get away from the city living, but it isn't. We're not Hicks. It's not Hicksville. It's
not at all.
A progressing city, and I'm just happy to spend the rest of my life here. It's been 30 years. My kid was born in 1990, and he was 2 years old when we moved here. So that's the way it goes. If Alameda has something compelling enough to attract a former Bostonian like yourself, a New Yorker like myself, and we've both been to different places. It's not like we haven't been around the country. And weather-wise, it's probably as good a weather as any 365 days a year average. Probably the best weather in the country. Certainly, excluding maybe Hawaii, but right here in California, we're kind of blessed. How about that?
If we are, and the neat thing about Alameda, it doesn't get too hot in the summertime, and it doesn't get too cold in the wintertime. In the summertime, you very rarely. I don't have air conditioning. You don't have air conditioning. You really don't need air conditioning in Alameda. And for the 2 or 3 days a year where it maybe goes up to 90 degrees, you might need a fan to keep the house cool. But it's very, very well cool during the summertime. In the winter, what we call the winter, you might have to use heat in the house, the natural gas heat, but it's not like back east where its temperatures are down to 9 above zero, like it was in Boston and New York back in those days. You had to use heating oil to keep the homes warm, but it's very, very mild tempered climate in the Bay Area.
It's 60 or 70. That's the way I look at it. Goes down to 55 at times, and maybe up to the 80s, rarely though. And if you don't like the weather in Alameda, you can drive 15 minutes and it changes drastically in whatever direction you're going. And
during the summertime, when we have a lot of people coming from around the country to visit the San Francisco area, it'll be 60 degrees in San Francisco, maybe 70 degrees in Alameda. And when people go up to the wine country, it's 100 degrees. It's a 30-degree shift. And it's just unbelievable. We have all these microclimates in California. If you go into the Central Valley in the summertime, you roast. But go out to the coast, it's 60, 65 degrees, very, very comfortable.
Very comfortable, and you can get to the snow within a couple of hours as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm blessed to have been stationed in Northern California when I was in the Air Force 50-some-odd years ago, and I just stayed out here, spent some time in Sacramento, in Danville, a little bit of time in Marin, Green Bay. Mostly it's been Alameda. So let's get on and talk about baseball a little bit. We can't. We don't have to talk about Alameda all day long. No. But so we got a strike going on that has been described by some as it's a lockout technically, but what baseball is doing now, it is gnawing on the soul of America. And I with a war going on, in this world, I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but we've always been able to depend on spring training, marking the solace, marking joy for the future, hope for the future. It's more than just baseball. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we look to springtime as renewal, and baseball exemplifies that renewal. You get to March 1st, the weather starts to get a little bit better, and the teams are down in Florida and Arizona, and they're getting ready for the new season. We haven't had a work stoppage since 1995. Back in 1995, they had the replacement players go through spring training. The regular players didn't go to spring training until that strike and lockout was settled. And what happened in 1994 when the players went on strike, when they couldn't come to an agreement, the season was canceled. The season ended on August 12th, 1994. The World Series was canceled for the first time ever, or since 1904, actually. It's been 90 years. The only reason 1904 didn't happen was that the Red Sox had beaten the Pirates in the 1903 World Series, and John McGraw didn't want to have his team lose to an upstart American League team in the second year of its existence. But anyway, so the fans stayed away after that, 95, 96, 97. They were very upset with what happened with Major League Baseball. And in 1998, you had that big home run race between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. And McGwire ending up with 70 home runs for the year, and I think that Sosa finished with 66. And people became fascinated with, and the crowd started to come back. And again, back in that scenario back then, it was the owners wanted a salary cap. The players did not want one. and the owners were on the wrong side of history. And again, this time, this is all driven by the owners. The collective bargaining agreement ended on December 1st, and the owners locked out the players, and they did nothing for 43 days. The owners have not negotiated in good faith at all in this scenario, what's going on right now. There's been some movements on some of the things that the players have wanted. The starting shot.
The DH.
Yeah, there's going to be universal DH in both leagues. There's some other minor rules change, but the salaries, 63% of the baseball players do not make huge salaries. They make a nice living, don't get me wrong. I mean, $570,000 is a huge amount of money for a player, but if your average player lasts 3 or 4 years in Major League Baseball these days, that kind of money is not going to keep him well fixed for his entire life. He's going to have to get a job or have something to fall back on. So
well,
the players,
that doesn't mean that they're not making a huge amount of money, $500,000 at this point.
Yeah.
And if they can't save some of that, and they shouldn't be guaranteed for a lifetime, they make good money. It's billionaires arguing with millionaires, and I have a hard trouble picking sides. Hard time.
But is that the revenues for the teams, because of TV or whatever, baseball has become a $10 billion a year business. There's more revenue coming into the teams, and the players feel that the owners should share some of that increases with them. People don't go to the games to see the owners; they go to the games to see the players, and so they want to have an increase in the starting salary for the young players coming in. They wanted to get it up to $700,000. The owners offered $630,000. I think in the last bargaining session, the owners agreed to $700,000, which is a huge sum of money. Don't get me wrong; it's a ton of money. But the owners don't want. The owners really want that salary cap, and the players feel if they have a salary cap, their ability to get contracts when they become free agents will be tamped down. Whether or not we can feel sorry for them, I don't feel sorry for them. They as long as the owners are willing to give players like Mike Trout $40 million a year, Mookie Betts $36 million a year, Max Scherzer $30. They have nobody to blame but themselves by increasing these salaries. So, you're right. You don't know who to feel sorry for. You have to feel sorry for the fans. You have to feel sorry for the people whose jobs, who work at the stadiums, all the support for the teams, the part-time people. They're not going to be able to increase their income. They're not making big money. The people, the ushers, the guards, the concession workers, the cleaning people, the groundskeepers, all these people, their jobs have been have no income. So I feel sorry for those people. Just today, the unions agreed to kick back some money to these workers, and I think that's a big step. That's a good thing. It is a good thing. Yeah,
but you have to realize this union has $1 billion worth of assets. So it's not like, and they've got a strike fund.
Sure.
So these players will be taken well care of. And you hit it right when you said the people that are most effective negatively, because does it matter if you're making $1 million or $1.3 million? Is your life going to change much? But if you're 80 years old or 75, like in my case, and baseball has been your thing, quote, for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, to take it away from us in our final few months on the earth, whatever it is, it ain't much left. How dare them? How dare both of them spit on fandom? And my only fight back that I could see for the fan through all of this, I would like it if no one bought merchandise where the major league player, the major leagues, MLB, or the Players Association make any kickback. Because there are still people walking around with brand new Giant hats in San Francisco. I noticed that the other day.
I don't disagree with you, Ralph. You know, there's blame on both sides, but I think there's more blame on the owner side. You know, they're getting all kinds of revenue streams now. Can you imagine baseball, MLB, and I think the NFL too? They're in league with DraftKings and all these sports betting, online sports betting. I mean, betting was forbidden for years, and now they're getting a piece of the action on those things. So the players are saying, look.
Is that hypocritical as hell? And continue to keep Shoeless Joe Jackson out of the Hall of Fame, and even Pete Rose at this point. If you're in cahoots with the betting action, and it seems to be legal, they're even thinking about putting a major league team that we know very well in Las Vegas. That may really happen. There's so much hypocrisy going on in the world of sports, and not just the world of sports, government, big business, church, synagogue. It's just crazy world that we live in.
Yeah, well, years ago, these people that are running the sports teams, these owners who are billionaires, they didn't get to be billionaires by being nice people. If it's nice, if they are nice people, that's okay. But in order to get to that level where they are, they had to be ruthless. And it's something that there's something drives them that most people don't, that we don't seem to have. You know, like you and I, we do okay. We're happy with our lives. We don't have to have all the money in the world. We're doing okay. But there are these people who are driven to be the best or the richest in their chosen field of endeavor. And they stepped on a lot of toes on the way up there. And they've been dealing with labor in their normal businesses, like John Fisher at the Gap, who is in, not only do they have all the stores, but he's into developing properties and what have you. You know, they have to deal with a lot of people, and labor is an expense, and they want to keep their costs down. And if they can ratchet down the players, so be it. And
that's the way they look at it. Instead of looking at the cost of labor as an investment, and the more you pay, the more quality you'll get out of labor, and they wouldn't have to think about, I hate my job, I'm being screwed 9 times till Sunday every day of the week. So it's all about, in this country, it's all about corporate greed. And nothing exemplifies corporate greed than the owners, than major league owners.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, as you know, when you have a business and you have labor, it's a deductible expense. It comes off your gross profit, and it does affect the bottom line. But there's something else that you don't know, and most people don't know, is that the owners can actually depreciate the value of the players. They get depreciation on the players. It's a depreciable asset. So depreciation is wonderful. You get to take the decreased value as a tax benefit, and people don't.
And unfortunately, they think of themselves as owners of that property. And when they're human beings, that's not in vogue right now. And
well,
it hasn't been.
You just brought up an interesting point, and it goes back. And in Leonard Coppett's book, The Concise History of Baseball, he spends a lot of time in the book about the going all the way back, way back to the 1890s. And there's been a constant struggle between the owners and the players. And the most vile thing that they had was the reserve clause that bound a player to the team for perpetuity. And it was the reserve clause. They could do anything they wanted. They could suppress salaries. Players, I remember years ago, Mickey Mantle won the Triple Crown in 1956. He had something like 360. The following year, in 1957, his average dropped to 325. George Weiss, who was the general manager of the Yankees, said, your hitting went down. We're not going to pay you as much as we paid you last year. We want to give you a 10% pay cut. And Mantle said, no, here he is, Mickey Mantle, probably the best player in baseball at that time. They wanted to cut his salary because his batting average went down. The guy's hitting 325. They won the pennant in 1957, and they want to cut his salary. Can you believe that? But that's the way they operated. And it wasn't until Curt Flood said, "I'm not a piece of meat. I'm not chattel. You can't trade me to where I don't want to go." And of course, Flood lost his case, but that was the beginning of the end of the reserve clause. And players do have free agency now, and those are some of the things that the players were complaining about, that the owners manipulate their service time. They hold them back. Instead of giving them service time when they first come up. They have certain things. If you play in 120 games, it doesn't count to your service time. They hold you back so they can act, instead of being a free agent after 6 years, maybe they're in the league 8 years before they hit free agency. They're 29, 30, 31 years old when they hit it, and when a player gets into his 30s, he's not worth as much, so he's not getting as much in free agency. So this might be part of the reason that there is an impasse. The owners they want to continue to manipulate the service time that the players have. So
well, there's a very sobering thought if you're either a player or an owner. Some congressman filed a suit. It's probably the 80th suit filed in the last 100 years to eliminate the reserve clause.
Well, not the reserve clause. They have an antitrust exemption.
Antitrust. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. If that goes, they're going to end up putting all the players in a pool and have new owners draft. That's the way I see it, because the franchises won't be worth nearly as much if the antitrust law is eliminated. And again, as a fan, I'm not appeased by these negotiations that started late enough that there's definitely going to be a delay in the season. We're going to have a bastardized season. And when you talked about 94, the first thing that hit my mind is Matt Williams was going to break the home run record.
Yeah.
And if it weren't, so you talk about history being changed. You talk about a man's life being changed. This is it's a cruel sport. Let me put it to you that way.
Oh, yeah. You know, they treat players get traded. They have no say they still have no say as to where they're going. Although in some of the contracts, the players now can say, you can't trade me. I don't want to go to these teams. But they have to be in the league 5 years or 10 years before they have that right. And it's a cold business. There's no sentimentality in it. And all I can tell you is it's a rough game. And the players know that if they get hurt or sick, there's 10 players behind them looking to take their jobs. It's very insecure. And you go back to that thinking that's part of the reason we had the steroid issues back in the 80s and 90s is because players, if they got hurt or injured, they know that their career can end in an instant. You remember what happened to Herb Score when he got hit by a line drive off the bat of Gil McDougall. Score was a great lefty pitcher. He was never the same after that. Ray Fosse, our dear friend who passed away last year.
Yeah, rest in peace, Ray.
Yeah, being hit he had that shoulder injury in the All-Star game. That changed his career. Baseball did respond with the injury that Buster Posey had when the guy slammed into it, and Posey lost the whole season due to a leg injury. And they have now rules what the catchers can do. You can't run over a catcher. You have sliding lanes, and it's a little bit different. So they're trying to protect the players, but it's still a brutal, cold game, very unsentimental. So
yeah.
There are lots of problems.
If you had to guess, is there going to be a season?
I'm not sure that there is. Right now, the first two series of the season have been wiped out. Every week it goes, it's going to be closer to this be before May 1st before it can get started. They need a month to get ready. They need 4 weeks to get ready for the season. So today is the 4th of March. So if they got started tomorrow, the earliest would be the 4th or 5th of April, but nothing's going to happen for another week. So you can see it's going to be mid-April, late April if they can get agreement. If they don't get an agreement, it'll be mid-May. So I don't know. I remember one year the hockey players canceled the entire season. They couldn't get anything going. And that might happen here. And the thing is, the popularity, baseball has issues. Part of the problem that we're having in baseball is that it became very difficult to watch the game. A game takes now between 3 hours and 10 minutes to 4 hours, and all you're getting to watch is walks, strikeouts, and home runs. There's no more hit and runs. There's no more hits up the middle. There's no more bunting. There's no more stealing. And, pitching changes drive you crazy. Every game has 5 or 6 pitchers. Starting pitchers go 5 innings, and they think that's wonderful. I mean, guys like Marichal, Spahn, Robin Roberts, those guys threw complete games. Johnny Sain in 1948, I think, had 40 starts, and he had 28 complete games. There won't be 28 complete games in an entire season for all 30 teams. So, you don't have games going 2 hours and 15 minutes anymore. It's just impossible. And so you sit there and you can fall asleep waiting for something to happen. And baseball doesn't seem to care. Well,
I'm depressed enough. Let's go on to the second most depressing thing happening, and that's a potential world war. cast your opinion on that. Jerry Feidelberg, is Putin just off his rocker? Is it too late for him to save face and reverse course? And what are the outside chances of this escalating to a nuclear war?
Well, one of the things that Biden did,
not that this stuff is anywhere near as important as baseball. Don't get me wrong.
Right, for sure. Well, one of the things that Biden did is that he has NATO unified, and he announced that the Americans are not going to take part in any combat actions in Ukraine. Now they're going to give financial and maybe material support to the Ukrainians in form of weapons, but he does not want this war to escalate. I know the Ukrainian President Zelensky wants a no-fly zone, but if you have a no-fly zone, that means that American planes are up there and they'd have to shoot down Russian planes, and that would be an escalation. So they're not going to do that, as painful as it is for the Ukrainian people. I think Putin may have miscalculated. It's not going the way they wanted. I think that they figured they would have control of the Ukraine in 5 or 6 days. It's been over about a week now. There's a very slow-moving stuff that's going on. The Ukrainian people have shown a lot of resolve. Zelensky has shown a lot of leadership, and so I think that the Russians will prevail, but they're not. They're showing flaws in their system. The sanctions that the Americans put on their banks, the ruble is worthless, and Putin's money is tied up with a lot of the oligarchs who are living in all these countries, in London and Monaco and the United States, or wherever they're living with their yachts and their jets and what have you. And Putin's money is in banks outside the country. And with the sanctions that they put on, and the fact that the value of the ruble has gone to zero, Putin's money is worth zero. So he's being hurt financially. Whether or not he's going to pull back, I'm not sure he's going to pull back. Putin was an ex-KGB. He worked like a CIA operator. And he felt that the downfall of the Soviet Union was the worst thing that had happened to Russia in the 20th century. And I guess that in his mind, he wants to take back Ukraine as part of the Soviet Empire. Ukraine, if you look at what they have, they're one of the largest wheat producers in Europe. They have a lot of natural resources. They have uranium. They have a lot of things that Putin wants, and that's why he's not backing down. There's Russia has 145 million people. Their economy is about the size of the state of Texas. All they have, their major exports are oil and gas, and with the pipelines being shut down, they're getting no revenue in. And with the banking situation, they're being hurt financially. And so if they can't buy fuel or they can produce fuel and food for their troops, they're going to get bogged down. And that may have an effect. And a lot of the soldiers in the Russian army don't understand why they're going into Ukraine, why they have to fight for Ukraine. And the Russian people, when they start getting the body bags, you've seen a lot of protests. There have been something like 6,000 people arrested for protesting in Russia. There's a lot of anti-Putin sentiment in Russia, and Putin is not a nice guy. He's murdered people. He's murdered people. Especially his political opponents. He's poisoned people in London. He tried to poison Navalny, and when he came back to Russia, he threw him in jail. So. He's just a ruthless, very ruthless dictator. and like most dictators, he will find a very harsh ending.
Okay, but how many people is he going to take with him?
Well, that's
last
a
night
real
scared
good question.
The nuclear bombing of a nuclear site scared me. I mean,
it should scare you. You know, if you have a nuclear meltdown, my God, they could wreak havoc. And I didn't know until just recently that Chernobyl, which had the nuclear meltdown in 1986, was located in Ukraine. You can't. People should not go anywhere near Chernobyl because the radiation is still there. It's not fit for living.
Well, you know, I'm just thinking of the irony that the first country to drop an atomic bomb was us.
Yeah.
So we really don't have a moral leg to stand on in these negotiations.
Well, that's a stretch out because in World War, you have to go back to World War II, and Harry Truman had to make a decision that the war would have gone on. The Japanese were fighting, and we were attacking the Japanese homeland. They estimated the number of deaths to be almost close. If we had to take over Japan, hundreds of thousands of American troops, and the war had ended in Europe in May of 1945, and so the decision was made to use the nuclear weapon twice, once in Hiroshima and once in Nagasaki, and it did end the war. I don't think we understood the terrible consequences of the dropping the bomb, but it was at the time, I think it was the right thing to do to end World War II. And since that time, you know, we probably have more nuclear weapons. Maybe the Russians have about the same amount of nuclear weapons, and it's a mutual stand-up because they know whoever shoots the first one, they're going to get wiped out too. So we don't want. That's why we have the atomic submarines. We can strike from anywhere in the world, and we can wipe the Russian Federation off the face of the earth. The problem is they can wipe the United States off the face of the earth. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
and here's a little sugar on it all. Trump complimented Putin on his moves to do this, and I mean, is that not a treasonous act in itself?
Well, I would have been much more pleased had Trump supported the president and said, "We support you, Mr. President, in your efforts to stop the incursion into the Ukraine." And by doing what Trump did, he gave aid and comfort to Mr. Putin. So yes, I agree with you. It was the wrong thing to do, but Trump is going to do whatever Trump is going to do. And that's all I could say. It was the wrong thing for him to do.
Yeah. Hey, Jerry, this has been an education. It's best to know than to be in the dark about stuff. And thank you for, under the circumstances of what's going on, a very realistic and informative 45 minutes.
Thank you, Ralph. It's always a pleasure. I had a great time.
I can't wait to see you. 24th, you'll be in Alameda?
Yeah, on the 24th.
Beautiful.
If not,
be well, my friend. Be well, my friend. Thank you for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. It's me, Ralph. Right, it's me, Ralph Tycho, and I am indeed the Tokin Jew. Adios, everybody.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.